Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Your Way. So, although there has been a little bit of a shift in my work or how I talk about my work in terms of me talking less about trauma, we are going back down the trauma road today because I've seen a lot of people out there who claim to be offering trauma healing when actually what they are is trauma informed. And I think it's important that we look at the difference. But first of all, why have I been talking about it less? Because it isn't because it's stopped being relevant or I've stopped been working with it, or I've stopped working with it, sorry. It's because if we go with what I consider the appropriate definition of trauma to be, which is anything at a point in time that overwhelmed a person's nervous system. So anything that was too much for us for too long or not enough is overwhelming for our system, which has the impact of it being traumatic for our systems. We're all just living with some trauma, right? Now, the challenge is, first of all, we probably all know we're living with some trauma. Whether or not we call it that, you might just call it overwhelm, you might call it burnout, it's all the same stuff. We don't necessarily need to be reminded of it all the time. It's not that helpful, is it? If you know you had a tricky childhood, you had a tricky childhood, you probably know it's had an impact. It doesn't need to be rammed down your throat. And so my change has really been, I just bring the skills and the tools that I have around the nervous system, around trauma healing, around all of those different pieces to help a person do life, work, business their way, right? That's the point, that's the shift. But I also think it's very, very important that if we are working in this area and we are overtly working in this area, that the people that are doing so actually have the skills and the tools needed to help. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because if you are in a space where you are being told that certain things are trauma healing and they are not, then you may have this misconception that what you are doing is the stuff that can help you heal your trauma, nervous system patterns, overwhelm, burnout, whatever you want to call it. And when it inevitably doesn't work for you because you aren't actually doing it, you might then be left with this feeling that you're broken, you're the only person that this stuff can't work for, something's wrong with you, actually trauma healing doesn't work, like it's not effective for you. And a lot of the time, it's not you, it's not the healing work, it's just that what you are getting is different to what you are being told that you are getting. So a lot of people now are trauma informed or they're nervous system aware. And so nervous system aware is, you know, if you go back and listen to episode, I think it's 3 of this podcast when it was called the Embodied Life Coaching Podcast. So like back at the end of 2022, I do an episode talking about the nervous system and common misconceptions that people have. So someone could call themselves nervous system aware when they know about the different branches of the nervous system. Maybe they've done a little bit of training in polyvagal theory. They have a general understanding that when someone is activated and anxious, they're in that sympathetic branch of their nervous system. When someone is depressed and shut down, they're in the low dorsal or low parasympathetic part of their nervous system, right? And then they could say, I'm nervous system aware. Well, it wouldn't necessarily be wrong. Or if somebody learns that when something overwhelms the system goes into a form of shutdown or a freeze response, and that can happen. Or, you know, if people are turning up to a session and they're saying, I can't, I'm stuck, I feel hopeless, there's an indication, okay, there's a component of freeze in their system here. Anyone that has a component of freeze, people pleasing, which is just another form of fawn, it's kind of that shutdown, that inability to say no, it's all indicative of this system is holding on to, insert your word of choice, trauma, overwhelm, burnout, right? I know most people don't like the word trauma, but it is what it is, right? Then you could say that they are trauma informed. Okay, so they can be nervous system aware and they can be trauma informed. Now, ideally, people who are nervous system aware and trauma informed will not do anything in the spaces that they are in to overtly and unsafely dysregulate somebody's nervous system or activate a trauma response or re-traumatize someone. And if they do, because we're humans and we do get activated, they have the tools to help them get back to a regulated state. Okay, that is the hope. I can tell you from personal experience that it is not the reality. Okay. But when it comes to trauma healing requires a period of time for a person to become sufficiently resourced so that their body has and perceives to have sufficient resources available to go in and be present with the stuff that is there. It does not mean reliving past traumas. It just means having the capacity to be present with the physical sensations that show up within a person's physiology in their body, okay? And then we have a whole stage of building within the system a felt sense of safety. So the system feels safe, like I have a body, I can be in my body, it is safe to be in my body. We then go through a period of learning to self-regulate, but we co-regulate first. So when I'm working with clients, their nervous system heals and becomes more regulated when they work with me with a regulated nervous system. And over time, they become the vessel that helps regulate themselves. So their own body becomes a resource for themselves, right? But that takes time. So when all of these different components are in place and we build the building blocks and we build the building blocks and we build the building blocks, the system is then ready to go through a very, very natural process of trauma renegotiation, which takes time, it takes support, it takes gentleness. It is not about forcing or trying to do it quickly. Like most of the time, it will need to be done in a one-to-one space or in a really, really safe and safely held group environment. But if you are being told to do stuff, and first of all, your system's like, I'm not sure I want to do this, and you're like, no, and you've been told, just do it, just do it. You just need to do it over and over again, because the more you do it, the more you'll get used to it. Red flag. That's all I'm going to say about that. Red flag. And if that's the system that you're in, and then you are being told that that is trauma healing, more red flags, more red flags, okay? We can make contact with some of our stuff, but if we are not in a place where we are sufficiently resourced to make contact with it, we will be re-traumatized, we will be sent down a further path of more freeze, of more shutdown, of more dissociation. You're going backwards, 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 not forwards. And I want to give you, I'm looking down because I've got a quote in my phone that I want to read to you. So one of the most well-known books on trauma is a book called The Body Keeps the Score by a guy called Bessel van der Kolk. Now, what's kind of good about this book is that he also references some of the other great pioneers of trauma. So he references Peter Levine, who is the kind of brainchild of somatic experiencing work. So that's a lot of the body work that I do with clients. He references Stephen Porges, who is the polyvagal theory guy, right? So the book's quite good. It's not the easiest read. I'll be honest, I'm listening to it again on Audible at the moment, but it's quite good because it does give a decent overview. And the reason why I've come back to this book is when I was on retreat, the quoits, so anyone that listened last week, the wooden sauna things, the triangle sauna things that we slept in, the quoits had books in, and my quote happened to have The Body Keeps the Score. And it wasn't like I wanted to get into anything heavy when I was away, but I did feel this like strong pull of, okay, I'm supposed to open this book, and whatever's on the page in front of me, there's a message there. And here is what I read, and I wrote it down. Not in my phone because it had been handed in. But I wrote it down and now it's in my phone. And here is the quote. People can benefit from reliving their trauma only when they are not overwhelmed by it. And that practically means you have to build the resources. You have to build the felt sense of safety. You have to build that co-regulation. You have to build that ability to be your own regulator before you can go into anything that is too challenging. If you are being asked to go and face stuff in your physiology, your fears, your traumas, your big patterns, and you have not done a decent chunk of work to get yourself to a place where you are not overwhelmed where it feels too much for your system, by reliving that experience, please do not do it, because you are not in a trauma-informed space anymore. You are not in a space where you are doing trauma healing. You are in a space where you are being re-traumatized. This is just going to activate your system. You are going to start off worse than you're going to finish off worse than where you started in that space. Then you're going to wonder what's wrong with you, why you can't do it. You're going to be gaslit. And it's just bad, 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 bad. And it's so important that it warranted a slight shift back into let's talk about trauma, because this stuff is important. Please be careful about the spaces that you do this work in. And if someone starts talking to you about trauma healing and you aren't sure that it is exactly what you should be getting, either ask them about it and ask them to explain, like, why are you asking me to do this thing? What's your rationale? Like, my system is saying no. Why are you telling me to do this? If you don't like the answer, pay attention to how that feels. And if you have any questions whatsoever and you want to know, like, I'm in this space, this is what I'm being asked to do, I'm not sure about it, it doesn't feel right, can we talk about it? Come and speak to me via however you would come and speak to me. And let's have a conversation so that you can do this work safely. And so you aren't being gaslit into thinking that something's wrong with you when you're actually just in a space that's re-traumatizing you. Really, really important. So I hope you found this slight tangent today helpful. Let me know what lands. Come and speak to me. Have a great week. We may or may not be back to normal topics again next week. Who knows? This is going live when I am on holiday on my own, living my best. I'm doing what I want and I'm following my joy life. I'm having a week in an all-inclusive spa hotel, adults only, in Mallorca. So who knows? Who knows what's coming up for me while you're watching this and where that will lead me. So yeah, keep an eye out for next week. Who knows? All right, take care. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.